JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. Friday, January 31st, 8:57 on this last trading session of the first month of 2025. Talk really quick about the market, some names I'm looking at. Go from there. S&P futures in the green. Who would have thunk it after that crazy whipsaw at the end of the day yesterday on that tariff news? Uh, I put it on the watch list. It feels like, if you remember back in, I think it was 2016, maybe? Trying to remember. Back in the summer, there'd be headlines. I think one time a headline came out and actually the markets dropped like 3%. There'd be tit for tat tariff news between the US and China. And it was like, oh my gosh, it's going to rattle markets, going to cause all these rising costs and all this stuff. And then, you fast forward 7 years and, or it's 2006 and 9 years. And nothing's really, it didn't pan out like all the fear mongering headlines made it out to be, right? And the markets had recovered. Not saying similar situation here with the tariffs was to me, like, I think change sometimes is good, right? Nothing, if the world never changed or evolved, we would just stay in the same place, right? So change sometimes is good, and then if the change doesn't work, you find different change. So we'll see what happens with this tariff situation. But it just, you see, it's unfortunate that news comes out at the end of the session. Thankfully, it wasn't a Friday option expiration. You're sitting on profits or what have you, and we recovered. We'll see how things play out. But in regards to the overall market, we had PCE data this morning, came in pretty much flat. It was almost like, I wouldn't say comical, but it's at the end of the month. We already had, pretty much got through the Fed and stuff. So it was almost like a non-event. After the close yesterday, Apple reported earnings. Great earnings considering again, fear-mongering folks out there in the bears. Number one, thought Berkshire Hathaway knew something, right? Because they've been selling their position. And then number two, it's all about the China, right? It seemed like every couple of days and every week or so there'll be new data coming out from China showing how slowdown in sales for Apple has been, and China's going to hit their revenues. They're going to have a decline in revenue growth and things like that. Then their earnings came out great, and then their guidance came out positive, like better than expectations. So you sort of stock rally. So I think that bodes well. So we kind of got rid of some of the possible headwinds that could be in the way of the market testing new highs. Next week, we get Amazon, Google, and I think there's like 800 or so earnings. I'll have to go check. There's a lot of other names reporting as well. So it'll be important to hear those. But also, I think what's good is you look at the action yesterday and to see what happened with Microsoft, UPS, ServiceNow, Caterpillar. All those names were getting hit, and the market was just heading higher. So if you had told me the day before that those names are going to be hurting yesterday, I would think the market would be selling off, and that wasn't the case. So that's overall market. And also, I think if there's any good thing about the crazy volatility we had, especially at the start of the week, it's that the SPY came down. That 600 handle looks like good support. And if you take a look, if the S&P closed up 0.5% today, it'll be green on the week, and the January month will be like 3.8% to the upside. So I think it's right now it's 3.25 for January. So great start to the month. Small caps started to outperform finally yesterday. We'll see. Maybe this is it. IWM 229 is that big spot. Want to see it over that handle. And then the yields have been coming down since middle of the month. So great sign here. I hope those continue to just head lower. And that's all in the face of the Fed doing this higher for longer rant for 2025. Who knows if they cut rates in 2025, but good to see the yields starting to come down. All right, so now individual names. First, I'll talk about Arista. It was this time yesterday I was talking about Arista, and then all of a sudden at the open, right before the open, it was 113, then boom, it was 115, and I'm like scrambling at the open. And I saw it was $3 or so on the calls, and I finally was able to get some of my calls out for 260 or whatever it was for over 400%. And then I held on to them because I'm looking at other trades. Of course, in hindsight, maybe I should have closed them all out, but I thought 118 was the target. It got all the way down to 113, closed at 113.86. The calls were still double, so I held them into today. It's gapping again here today, 116. So I'll use that 118, or if I can get them out for $3, 350, I'll do that. And I'll use 114.50 or so as a stop. But what a great bounce play on Arista, and I'll probably, who knows if I'll continue to look for bounce opportunities on that one. But yeah, just nice to see that one. So 118 is the target there. So that was a monster one this week. And then Shopify. And Shopify, rallied 2% yesterday. I thought 120, and then some FOMO after over that earnings, the earnings high back in November. It looked like it was going to break 120. It couldn't. I didn't want to see premium erosion and or it reverse into the 118s because then the 120s are going to get crushed. So I closed the last of my 120 strikes out for 500%. I'm not sure if I'll visit here, although it could be a blue sky breakout, especially if it breaks over that earnings high. I think it's 120.42 somewhere in there. But another great trade this week as well. Shopify has been a good one. So I might be on my list as a hedge too, because you saw how volatile it was with the market when we sold off post Fed in December. Could be, I'll have it on both sides, right? It's been great for the calls and the puts. And then Baidu. So Baidu, I had on the watch list. I mean, I had those 95s last Friday I added. I was able to close some of those out for 100% to cover costs, and then 400% later in the week. And then it had a little breather on Wednesday, and it looks like it hit the 200-day moving average, couldn't break through. And then yesterday it kind of opened flat, and then it just embarked on this great ramp, and it was like nonstop. And you saw BABA going. I keep saying about just a tad shift in sentiment, and I think these names are just they're gonna continue to rally. So not only that, I think some of the, I bring up the tariffs, but I think some of that, the hype around China and the U.S. having this another trade war and all that, I think it's gonna be the reverse, and I think that's overblown. So I think there's an opportunity. Needless to say, once it broke that 200-day moving average, I went and got some strikes into next week. By the afternoon, I was able to close some of those strikes out for 100%, and then I still have the 95. So I have some of those left. At times during the afternoon, those calls were $3. No, $2. Excuse me, I got them at 30 cents. But I thought maybe there'd be some continuation today, and I still think there could be. I'll use the 93.50 area as a stop. I don't know what the calls will look like at 93.50, but I'm sure they'll still be green. But I think maybe 98, 97, 98 is possible. So I'll look to hold the calls for that. And then I'm going to hold the rest of my strikes into next week, because I think, especially over the weekend, there'll be more hype. And then if we get a gap up, like last week when I was getting the Baidu calls, I put in on the private tweet, I'm like, it looks like a gap and go for China over on Sunday into Monday. We didn't really get that, but one of these weeks is going to be another one of those, it's going to be like deja vu, because back in the day, China used to have these gap and goes Sunday night into Monday. All right, that's Baidu. Adobe. So finally over that 450, 445 looked like a wall, like a brick wall, finally broke through, and then it broke quick, hit 448, and then stuck there pretty much for the whole day until that tariff news came out, pulled it down, closed at 446. Up, gapping again. It's like the second or third day in a row where it has a weak after hour session, and then it gaps in the morning. It's right here at 449.50. If it breaks 450 at the open, I might get some spec lotto calls to play for a move to 460 today. I was looking at calls next week, and the 480s almost look like the best on a risk reward basis, but those are pricey, and it's been tough staring at Adobe because it's been frustrating because it hasn't. I was hoping to move that it's done since I've started adding the calls mid-January would have happened a lot quicker on that pincher setup. It hasn't, so it's wasted a lot of mental energy. So I'll probably, after today, I'll be done with Adobe for a while, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it start to do some possible gap fills in the next week or two, 480 or so. That's Adobe. And then MDB. So you look at the cloud names, they were selling off with Microsoft, after their earnings showed weaker than expected cloud numbers. Then you saw it bounce. And, the name I looked as the leader for the cloud would be Snow. And once Snow started to bounce, I was actually looking early in the morning for MDB calls, and then it sold off. I'm like, okay, good thing I didn't add them. Went back down to 265, but then it started to bounce again. I said, wow, this might be a great opportunity to play a bounce, especially if Snow gets going. Maybe it gets back at 285 plus. So got those spec lotto calls. It's gapping here in the pre-market. I think I'll be able to get some of my calls out for 100% at the open, and then I'll just hold the rest. It could be one of those overshoots that it goes back and tests up, maybe possibly to 290 today. Call me crazy, but not sure I'll add any more strikes on that. Too expensive to play for that continuation. I keep mentioning AMD. I'm hoping I don't miss it today, and I don't want to chase either, but it's right near 120 here at the open. You also have Jensen's going to speak to Trump today, so I don't know if that'll help alleviate some restrictions or put a spark in the semi sector. But needless to say, they report earnings Tuesday. I might look for some spec lottos today and possibly some calls into next week to play for premium builds. Still eyeing Joby here. April strikes flat. It's down 1% yesterday, but to me, if you're looking at Joby, that's almost like a flat trade. It hasn't done much. The only issue here is the 50-day moving average is creeping up. It's at 814, so don't want to see a break under that. But don't be surprised if I had some Joby April strikes. TripAdvisor sold off 1.5%. It's down here at 1748. Still like this one. Nothing. The story hasn't changed much. They report earnings February. I think it's February 20th. And then, where's my Roku? Why don't I have Roku here? Oh, here's Roku. So Roku, great session yesterday. I think it was up 6%. Actually, that's not the right chart. All the way up to 8. It closed at 85.28. It looked like it was knocking on the door 86s. It's over 86 here in the pre-market. 86.75 is that December 8th high. So if it gets, yeah, AMD is February. It's on Tuesday morning. Good morning. Yep, Tuesday morning. So Roku's right at its 52-week high, 86.75. Unfortunately, I wouldn't say unfortunately, but they announced their earnings date yesterday, and it's February 3rd, February 13th, right? So my thought process was that it was going to be, typically they reported earnings the 14th. I think it was last year was the 14th. The I thought it was going to be encompassed the February 21st option expiration. So that's why I got the February 21st, just in case, because if they announce a date after you have the calls, the premium is going to get destroyed. But then on the flip side, if you get calls in an area where the premiums aren't reflecting earnings, which the February 14 strikes are not reflecting earnings, you're going to get an instant premium boost just on them announcing that date. And sure enough, that's what's going to happen. I was looking at the chart this morning, 86.75. If that breaks, I might look for some spec calls into next week. Don't call me crazy. I still have my Februaries. I'll hold on to those. Once those get over a double, I'll look to close some of those out to cover costs. I'll ride the rest free into earnings. And that's it, folks. I think I'm running out of breath. Let's have a great end of the week. I'll be back. Rock and roll.